Great Polish composer and pianist Frédéric Chopin once said, "Sometimes I groan and suffer and pour out my despair at the piano." Considering the present scenario, the world would be a better place if we believe in the power of music. In this episode of the Soham Roy Show, we have with us one of the finest pianists of our generation, Gloria Campaner. Gloria, welcome to our show.
Thank you.
So how are you doing, Gloria?
Yes, very well. I'm in a very special moment of my life without public concerts. So it's a very interesting turning point for me.
Right. So Gloria, you debuted as a pianist at the age of 12 years with Venice Symphony Orchestra. What was your inspiration on becoming a pianist? Tell us a bit about your journey.
Yes, well, that was the first concert with the orchestra, but the first public concert was at about 5 years. I was on 5 years old,
Right.
and had been like a never non-stop journey since more than 32 years of performances. So very, very intense. And what can I say? Music was my companion, is my companion, of course, every
Right.
single day of my life.
Wow, that's so interesting. What is your view on the classical music scene at present? Do you feel that it is still a way of entertainment for intellectual minds only?
Oh no, definitely, it's very much changing, and I'm happy about that. And I'm happy to see that many things are changing in the scenario of classical concerts. They can be in different place. They are not too long, or artists are available on mixing programs, not doing intervals, playing longer than usual, but having a shorter concert altogether. And I see a lot of flexibility coming along
Right.
compared to before. But the scenario is nevertheless still very difficult because for the young generation, it's very difficult to impose like a unique voice or a unique way of producing music and expressing their own soul in a way, you know.
Right.
So it's very complicated at the moment. That's why I took some time off from public concerts to dedicate my time to younger musicians and younger artists that have to face this difficult time we live in, because there is
Absolutely.
not a very sure future for whoever study music now,
Right.
at least in our country. So it's not very convenient to study something that you don't know whether it will become your job. So
And it's also when
I'm
you
happy
have
if I
a very commercial market over there. I mean, we all have a lot of different genres of music coming in, and especially it's in the modern times, it's the time of commercialization. I mean, so classical music is. Do you believe classical music is still in the back foot?
What do you mean for back foot? Sorry.
Right. For back foot, I meant that do you personally believe that like all the other genres of music like rock, pop, jazz, they are very commercial in terms of classical music. So do you believe that classical music is still a way of entertainment for a very specific group of people, is a niche art?
Well, it is for a specific group of people because until the scenario will completely change, lots of people believe they have no tools to understand it, and they're afraid to enter the theater because they don't know if they're dressed properly, when to clap, if they are, cultured enough to understand. So there are a lot of prejudices, and it's very difficult to attend a classical music concert for certain people, so they just give it up, and
Absolutely.
this makes me very. But the things are changing. The things are changing. What is most difficult now is for younger generation, for sure.
Right. So the word interpretation, what does it mean to you? And who is your favorite composer and why?
The word interpretation means to me being able to shorten one distance, the distance between the source of imagination from the composer and the listener. So
Right.
the interpreter, person in between, like a mediator, who connects these two very far away worlds, because sometimes the score can be dated many centuries before. So it's a way
Right.
to blend and bond the two universes that are so far away. Like, you know, playing something of 300, 400 years ago on a public today, yes, on an
Right.
actual time. So it's a very special way of connecting people and views and visions. My favorite composer, it used to be Robert Schumann through
Oh,
all
wow.
my life. Definitely romantic music, and he is very special in my personal growing as a musician and development as a pianist. So I studied all his music, and I wrote also kind of a thesis. My university degree was on way of writing music, which is very specific and very special, because he used to put like letters and names of people that he wanted to name. And for example, the name of Clara, his wonderful wife, he used to
Right.
put it inside the he was writing. Very famous is the beginning of his piano
Wow.
concerto, who has the name of Clara at the very beginning of the piece in
Okay.
the main theme. Otherwise, I would say Beethoven also, because a lot of power, a lot of light, and you really feel inside the music with all the joy you can imagine music can produce. You feel that you can
Right.
hold it, and you are in the power of it. Yes.
Absolutely. And it's much more grandiose, the compositions of Beethoven.
Yeah, very grandiose. So if you are not in a good mood, you can play Beethoven and it will cheer you up for sure.
Right.
Also listen, cheer you
Right.
up.
Absolutely. So you have performed in various prestigious venues around the world, namely Carnegie Hall, Grand Teatro La Fenice, among them. Which one of them was your memorable performance and why?
Oh, uh, I don't know. Each one is special actually, because now my latest tour was in India,
Right.
and of course played in different cities, also in Mumbai and CPA, which is grandiose, no? But then I went to Nagaland, and it was the first time in my life in such a small, very north country of India.
Right.
So sometimes more touching to see places that are so far away from my way of understanding. So for me, it's a way of growing and connecting to people and different cultures. That's more emotional for me than playing at the Carnegie Hall. Of course, uh, each of those venues were so important for my life that I have such a fond memory of each concert,
Right.
definitely.
And just tell me about what was the weirdest thing that happened during any concert of yours?
Oh, there are so many things that happened. Once in London at St. Martin's in the field, the piano constantly was sliding away
Wow.
because there was a marble stage, and actually it's a church, as you know.
Right.
So for some reason, the piano's brakes were completely broken. They thought they were fixing it, but for 3 times they thought, okay, it's fixed. And then I was playing the beginning of Beethoven Appassionata Sonata, like Opus 57. And at the third note, the piano would start sliding towards the first rows of people.
Really?
And there was
Wow.
families with the baby in the, kinder,
Yeah.
uh, how do you stroller or on a wheelchair. Oh, it was really unbelievable, and the piano would just slide. And I didn't want to play anymore, but there was a radio performance. So this was really incredible. At the end, they had to tie the piano, like they really constructed like something with ropes, and they had to hammer it, really fix it with some bigger construction just to hold it, which was really horrible to see. But other times, the entire piece that holds the pedals, the piano has a pedal piece underneath, and it fell completely. It broke and it fell down.
Wow.
And it can happen. Maybe it was an instrument. So the entire piece just was not attached very well. And I remember that I was playing something very romantic, maybe Rachmaninoff, and suddenly it was sounding like Scarlatti, or, it was sounding absolutely dry, like
I can imagine that. Oh, I can really imagine.
Another time in Africa, they thought I would bring the piano myself. So when I arrived at the hall, there was no piano. And I said, oh, but don't you have your own instruments like your colleagues have? Because I was with a group, Liszt, and everyone, flutists, clarinetists, everyone had their own. And I said, well, I can't bring through the world with 4 flights a piano.
Right.
And then
how can people think that a pianist who's coming from halfway from Europe to Africa can bring a piano?
Yes. Well, I'm talking about very special situations. Of course, all of them were not like, there were concerts like borderline with, professional institutions. It's always me that wants to discover new places and new cultures. This has been something that I developed all my life. So in that place, they didn't know I would not bring it. So they had to go find one piano in a very old library, and they had to carry it actually on their own back. It was such an experience. Wow. So there was no piano in the hall, definitely. So very interesting.
Had quite a number of experiences to cherish in your life.
Yeah. Many more. I played also in Easter Island, Rapa Nui, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And it was the first kind of classical music concert in the history of the island. And it was so interesting for everybody that it attracted animals, like wild animals, wild horses, turkeys, chickens, dogs, and ducks. And it was so interesting sound. Horses that are wild in the just approached very close because it was open air.
Wow, that
and
was kind of experience.
Lots of coming.
Wow. That was one of a kind experience that you have had. I mean, when apart from human beings, also the other creatures that God has created are being attracted by the power of music.
That's right.
So Gloria, nowadays softwares are replacing the actual musical instruments. Do you believe that the finesse, the emotions, the nuances can be replaced by the softwares?
No, I don't think so. I don't want to believe that.
Right. Because nowadays different kinds of VSTs we are talking about are in action, like different composers, different modern day composers for making films, making sounds. They're using the different kinds of VSTs, the softwares, apart from real musicians to cut costs maybe at some times. But do you really believe that these kind of things can replace the actual emotions, actual nuances of the players?
No, I just said I don't believe. I didn't listen carefully, so perhaps for certain publicity or long playing, long films or how can I say, maybe like background music of certain scenarios,
Right.
or a certain screenplay. Maybe it can work because you're actually watching something else, so you basically just feel that there is some sound.
Right.
But for that, I can imagine that it could actually work, and like advertisement, or why not, or jingles at the beginning of any show or TV shows, but going to live concerts with that, I don't think so.
Right. Absolutely. And also there is a thing that I personally believe, that sometimes imperfection is a kind of perfection that you have.
Oh, definitely, yes.
Right.
Mistakes, opportunities, like Miles Davis
Absolutely.
used to say.
Very true. Do you believe that it needs a certain age and certain life experience to interpret some composers like Chopin, Debussy, Rachmaninoff, Schumann, etc., in a more better way?
I I don't really believe that you need a specific age, but you need a specific amount of experience and emotional experience.
Right.
So have to free your heart as soon as possible in order to be able to perceive the world in the entire way.
Mm.
So of course, when you're 5, 6 years old, um, perhaps you haven't explored all the possibilities of perceptions,
Mm.
and not all the emotions came along, because there is the consciousness is still the awareness is not completed, perhaps. But there is maybe something. I remember that I was playing Schumann and Chopin anyway at 6 years old, and when I listened to those
Mm.
concerts, special anyway. So there is apparently there is something that even a child can feel, a lot actually, that can be very pure and very unique and very sincere. But of course, the more you grow, the more you can understand, like 360 degrees,
Mm.
what that music was about. And what is the most important if you have to express something through an artistic gesture is, of course, experience. So if you don't live, you play, actually,
Absolutely.
in my opinion.
Right. And there are some pieces like like composers like Franz Schubert, the Unfinished Symphony. Like, it was known that
Mm-hmm.
Schubert really created that music, and that music was put in a cupboard and discovered 60 years after his death.
Yeah.
And so I also personally believe that it needs certain kinds of life experiences, and to know more about life, to know more about the environment, to just play composers like Chopin, Debussy, and Rachmaninoff and Schumann, because they belong to different source of periods and different musical aspects they differently have.
Yeah. There is an instinct that you can have, definitely. Uh, Beside that, you have to live a lot, and you have to wanting to live, not only survive. I mean, just being part of the world and
Absolutely.
struggle, and you know, really participate in the action of life, and
Right.
then you can be a better artist.
Very true. So you're a part of Donatori di Musica, which brings classical music to terminally ill patients in cancer hospitals. Can you explain to us about this noble engagement?
Yeah, well, this one is one of the things I do, and I did all the time. As I said before, every time I can, I just go and play inside unconventional places, let's say, so where you normally don't listen to classical music or to any music.
Hmm.
So it brings joy, and it brings life and love to people.
Right.
and especially people that need it more than others. And so this is a fantastic association, of course, who organize this all over Italy.
Right.
But there are many um, foundations or links to any possible aid that you can give, also through art. So whenever I see something like that, if I have time, I do it, definitely.
Right. That's a very noble thing that you do to help patients who are terminally ill and who are supposed to believe to have less life expectancy. And you're
Yeah,
helping them through music. It's a very noble deed indeed.
thank you. Well, I believe that there is such a richness, and the power of love inside music is so strong that can heal,
Right.
really. And I was part of a research in USA, in Utah actually, who was dedicated to deaf
Okay.
music with special harmonies that they were ill also because they couldn't talk. They were not talking. They were mute and deaf, and with also other disease, little children. And music was, even if they couldn't hear, they could feel the vibrations. They could
Right.
hear something, And the research was to find out how they can calm down from their regular symptoms, from their different illness, and it was working because I was there with the doctors and the researchers,
Right.
and the results were amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really amazing. Just like the thing that you told me just reminds me of the situation with Ludwig van Beethoven when he composed one of his best pieces after being deaf.
That's right. Yes. He was, but because of the vibrations, he
Right.
would chop piano. You see, like the piano, he would
Right.
chop the leg. Piano would go on or like without being suspended, and he would lean on the floor, play, and feel the floor vibrations. Can you imagine?
Wow.
With
So,
his own body. He was like the floor was wooden, and he would lean with the piano, and everything would vibrate, and that was his perception of his pieces, and he composed so amazing piano pieces and the symphonies after that.
right.
Major symphonies without hearing one single note. All the string quartets, not one single note was hearable. Amazing. Yeah.
Right. So it's basically on the basis of the vibrations, you used to get to know what's an F sharp, what's a G, and what's a different notes. And
No,
those.
well, he would know it anyway because
Right.
it was sounding in his head, obviously. But was also using the little vibrations he could still hear because he was, gradually becoming deaf. So he would lose hearing power day by day. So, the less he had, the more he would try to look for some leftovers of frequencies and vibrations that were on the floor.
Right.
Amazing.
And
Amazing.
and
story.
also when you are that ill that you cannot hear the craft that you have been dying to do all your life, that despair, that groan inside you, that sadness inside you led to create one of the most beautiful pieces that he created in his life at the age when he was deaf.
Yeah, it's amazing. Amazing, incredible. Like when the Ninth Symphony was over, or in other symphonies, I mean, the public used to wave white handkerchiefs because anyway, he would not hear any clapping.
Right.
So the way to congratulate was waving white tissues and waving
Wow.
waving that. He had a recognition,
Really
applause
amazing.
because applause.
Right. Because you couldn't hear the
They
clap
wouldn't
from the
hear, no.
audience. Yes. Right. Amazing. So, Gloria, you have given masterclasses in many places around the world and have been a jury member in many competitions across the world. How do you see the response of young students to classical music, when in modern times there is a significant dominance of other genres of music?
Classical music is still important, and there is immense talent, because there are great teachers, great professors, and lots of amazing musicians growing up every
Right.
single day. I would
Hmm.
so very beautiful to see. There are much more talented musicians now than 20, 30, 40 years ago, or at least they are available, maybe through social medias, YouTube, or so I can't say if there are really many more, but right now we have the perception that there are more, at least. But I think that the number had increased a lot.
Right.
And that's why there is much more comparisons, competitions, feeling of being not good enough, feeling that you are just one of millions. So that's why it's very difficult for them, for all of us actually, but for a very young artist to believe that he is something in this big amount of crafts and creations and available art sources. So that's why the mental health and all the emotional part comes to play, and that's where I want to help, because if you don't take care of the emotions also and all the psychophysical technique is not enough then, and your technical preparation is not going to rescue
Right.
against such disease from the society, definitely.
Right. And also classical music is, I believe, the root of learning music, because when you learn the music in a classical form, any art, be it music or any art, when you learn it from the roots, it has to start from the classical way to actually learn
Definitely.
the craft. Right. You've been collaborating with world's leading orchestras like the English Chamber Orchestra, RTSI, Lugano, Seoul Symphony Orchestra, etc. Which performances do you enjoy the most? Being a soloist or being in an orchestra?
I used to play more solos than orchestras productions every year, because when I do a solo recital, I am completely free with
Right.
my ideas, with my takes, with my visions, and with my unique only way to share music with the
Right.
public. So it looks like I always had preferred that, but it's not actually true, because my most beloved way of making music is chamber music. So
Right.
what I enjoy the most, playing with others, and the occasion in which you learn the most from music is when you play with other musicians. That's the best school, actually. There's nothing better than just listen to others and learn from them if they're great, but you always learn.
Right.
So, and also to imagine different instruments. So if you have a chance you play always the piano all your life, but if you blend it with voice, with wind instruments, with strings player, then your sound also changes, because you try to imitate something that is completely different. So you also work on developing your sound if you manage to, blend with them. So to answer your question, definitely I love to play with other people. So if the amount of people is 60 musicians in an orchestra, or 70, or 80 or 50, then it's a pure joy. But you know, when you're a soloist, the orchestra is there like accompaniment. So you have to try to make chamber music, but sometimes you have the struggle of having, you know, the whole concerto on your
Right.
hand. So it's not exactly the same, but I want to give an advice to every colleague and to every musician and to every young musician that a good way is also understanding a big orchestra production as a big chamber music experience, so that you end up playing with the single instruments and you wait for a solo, flute solo or clarinet solo or, you know, bassoon solo, and you listen and you try to blend with it. So big orchestras can be also like big chamber music group,
Right.
very big symphonic music, let's say. So it's a good way of understanding it, that you're not alone.
Right, absolutely. And you get to learn from different kinds of musicians, their perspective to music, what they listen, how they listen, and how they play.
Yeah.
Since 2018, you have uniquely conceptualized and started a workshop called C# to help performing artists to overcome situations of psychophysical stress. Can you explain us about the whole project?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I have been always alone, as most of my colleagues, I believe. So having to deal with so many emotions and very difficult situations, extremely difficult, stressful, and you know, on the border of psychological collapses, you know, because you have every shoulders and all the responsibilities. Also, all your choices in music are also heavy. You feel responsible for everything you do. And most of musicians are alone. We are alone on that. We are alone backstage. We are alone on stage. We are alone in our practice time. It's very difficult to have this time of sharing with your own professor, because you see your teacher once a week and or once a month, and it's not easy to speak on things that are not visible but that you feel inside your body. And so I started to develop something that could help the musicians with that, and that they can feel safe and protected, and that there is a place in which there is care for this, and they can share, they can talk, and they definitely are not alone anymore. So that their emotional state is understood and shared.
Right. That's what is very important, to understand what a pianist, even a pianist or even an artist, what he or she thinks about. Because most of the time, I believe that music itself is the language that you speak out of your grief and out of your different situations you have.
Yeah.
And it's very good, and it's a very noble thing to help people like that, what you have thought, because most of the musicians, most of the artists go through a phase of their life when they are alone, when they are misjudged, when they are misunderstood.
Yeah.
You have performed at prestigious Arena di Verona on the occasion of Beethoven 250 with Orchestra da Camera Canova and Italian writer Alessandro Baricco. Can you tell us some more about that experience, please?
Yeah, it was in the middle of the lockdown. There was a little windows in which the concert could be public again. So we went into this amazing venue, which was it had a different set, because people could not stay in the middle part. So it was really used as a complete arena. Like we were in the middle and everyone was around. Normally the public stays in the plateau, you know. So it was also for us a unique way to see this venue, which is very famous in Italy, especially for opera. So they have an opera through all the summer. So it was an amazing experience. And it was for us a wonderful way to celebrate the birthday of Beethoven, telling many things about him that people don't know, many
Right.
things about him and his personality. So it was like a celebration, complete celebration, let's say,
Well, that would have
from
been
different
amazing.
points of view. Yeah, there is also a video. We did the same thing in the theater in Ferrara for all schools of Italy. So we created a format that went inside all the schools because the schools were closed and it was Christmas. So on the same year for Christmas, we did it for the schools, and the video is on YouTube and it's very interesting. It's in Italian, but it's the history of Beethoven.
Wow. And also, the celebrations has to be that grandiose for the man who has composed such one of the grandiose music in his lifetime.
That's right.
With this, we come to the end of this episode in conversation with Gloria Campaner. Thank you, Gloria, for your insightful words and a glimpse of your wonderful journey that you have had. It's an honor to have you in our show.
Thank you. Thank you very much.